it went slide.
Okay, so now we are going to start. So Assalamu alaikum and welcome everyone. I'm glad that all of you could join and happy to introduce Professor Maria Nedeva as the speaker of the session. Maria is the Professor of Science and Innovation Policy at the Manchester Institute of Innovation Research, Manchester Business School, University of Manchester. She is a distinguished scholar in the field of science and innovation policy and sociology of science, with over 65 publications on different topics. Her research focuses on science dynamics, specifically examining policy-driven change affecting both the social conditions of science and research and their intellectual characteristics. Professor Nedeva teaches at all levels from undergraduate to doctoral programs and is known for her innovative approaches to education, believing that academics contribute value to society through enabling learning rather than traditional lecturing. She will talk today about research governance. The title of the talk is From Admin to Ally, Building Responsive and Sustainable Research Support for World-Class Excellence. So Professor Nedeva, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. You can all hear me? Yeah?
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to talk to this meeting. Honestly, I have no idea how people got to me for this, but let me tell you what has been my major preoccupation in the last several months. I'm writing a book called Does Policy Matter? And I suspect this is highly relevant because to answer these questions, namely whether research governance, which is all research policy and research funding, matters or changes anything in terms of science and how it functions and develops, I had to, my team and I had to develop a novel framework for doing that. And you will see how it plays in the whole thing. Right. So let me first tell you what I intend to talk about, what I would like us to do today. This is today, I hope we will manage to complete two tasks. First, I would like us to remind ourselves as to why research support matters. I believe that probably I don't need to work very hard on convincing you. You invited me to talk about research support, so obviously you believe that it matters, but a reminder won't be wasted, I believe. Next, I would like us all to remind ourselves about the position of the universities in the knowledge production process. Right. Next, I will suggest a comparative framework or propose a comparative framework for university research support. I will tell you how you can use this yourselves, share a typology of different research support models around the world, and we will have a bit of a game here trying to guess where your university fits in all that. And last but not least, I will share with you some practical ways to use this typology. One thing that I certainly do not intend to do is to tell you how to organize your research support. I've read your research strategy. You are very advanced in all that, and I would rather try to share experience, provide frameworks for you to think about and eventually conceptualize change in your research support if you think that it's necessary. And the other one thing that I would like to be an outcome of this talk is that you have a solid basis to continue discussions amongst yourselves and amongst the different groups involved in the knowledge production process, namely university leadership, administration, researchers, academics, etc. Okay, so let's go. Now, why does research support matter? and it matters enormously, and its importance is ever increasing. Well, there was a time when science and excellent science was a matter of only geniuses, although this is kind of still a bit of a problematic statement. But this time was about a century and a half ago. Today, actually, research is a cutthroat. I put on the presentation endeavor, but I probably should say business to a degree. It is more competitive than many industries around, and research excellence requires great ideas, true, but to have truly excellent research and support research, excellent research sustainably, so it's not just flukes from now and then, one needs responsive, sustainable, and enabling environments. And these environments, as we shall see later, are largely provided by universities, although this is field specific, right? So now, I told you that I will share with you a completely novel conceptualization of kind of science. And what we've done is we conceptualize science as the interactions between two different domains at the moment, namely research space, which is policy and governance research space, where all research funding for organizations and people happens, all policies are developed, etc. Research fields, which are set of research fields. These are usually international or transnational, but they're certainly transorganizational. Even social sciences that until recently were not that internationalized are actually transnational, are developed by transorganizational and in some cases transnational research communities. And in the middle of this, as a linchpin, which you can see here, are research organizations, namely universities and research institutes. Now, research organizations have absolutely vital role in this process, the knowledge production process, and the links between research governance, which happens in the research space, which is policy, funding, etc., and the knowledge production processes which generate knowledge which happens within the confines of research fields. Now, what research organizations do is they actually translate signals from policy and funding domains, namely research spaces, into conditions for knowledge production to occur. That is why it is so important, and that is why research support at university and research organization level is so vital. Now, this kind of is just for information. This shows you the fact that research fields actually have influences from different research spaces, because the local knowledge communities that produce knowledge come from different local domains, right? Different countries, but actually the global research fields contains teams from these different countries. Now, how this is organized is very different in different fields. So particle physics, most people go to one of the large particle accelerators, be it CERN, be it the one that is in Russia, and the field is organized around these large facilities. So this kind of fields largely bypass national conditions. However, there are fields like lab sciences, for example, which actually are very national based, because the science develops in labs that are within the universities, within nation space, national contexts, national research spaces. Now, from what I saw from the research strategy that I was sent from your university, a lot of the fields you support are actually multidisciplinary, and they are global by their very nature. They go beyond, far beyond, Saudi Arabia, and they actually like environmental issues, for example. They are global issues, which makes this acknowledgement particularly important. Now, I'll remind you where this plays again in the very specific stuff about research support at organizational level. Now, so just to crystallize this message, the universities are the linchpin connecting research governance and epistemic governance. So if you want to support excellent science, the universities and how they translate messages from research spaces is absolutely critical. Okay, now let me move on to the comparative framework for university research support that I would like to propose. This framework unfolds along 7 different dimensions, and I will go over those, providing you a concise definition of the dimension, the indicators which can measure how far along are you, and the comparative questions that you can ask yourselves to position the way in which your university provides research support to other places around the world. Now, so I'm very sorry, that is a bit much text, but kind of listen, and the reason I put it on is because I will send this presentation, share it with organizers of this meeting, and you can use directly what is in this table to position yourselves and to check where you stand. So the first dimension of this framework is, broadly speaking, research conditions. And as I already mentioned, universities actually have the primary responsibility for creating the conditions for research. Now, these are all the tangible and intangible characteristics of the environments that enable researchers to perform to their best, right? More specifically, these are all constituent parts of research infrastructure, like labs, equipment, libraries, data sets, etc. Administrative efficiency plays here, availability of research and support staff, funding, access and management, collaboration spaces and tools, and world-class researchers. Now, I would like to expand a bit on a couple of those, well, actually 3 of those, namely availability of research support staff. Now, there has been a tendency in universities to actually cut down the number of research support staff, substituting this with contemporary tools. Right. So, for example, at my university, we expected to even deal with kind of accountancy problems and completely managing our research projects using contemporary tools. Now, we can do that. We academics and scholars and scientists are very clever people. We can do that. But one has to be aware that this eats severely into our time. So if we are to do world-class research, probably this is best taken over by highly professional research management staff. Funding, access and management is another one I wanted to tell you about. Again, in kind of Western countries, the tendency has been for the last several decades to decrease the amount of organizational funding for research in favor of project-based funding for research, somehow assuming that that is much better, and we scholars and scientists produce much higher quality research because we compete. Now, let me tell you something. What people who propagate this kind of ideas believe or they don't realize is that scientists and scholars have always competed, and the competition has always been severe. But until relatively recently, we've competed for priority mainly, who gets there first. So we're very internally driven people. Now, once we have to compete for all funding and resources, a large proportion of our time goes in competing for resources rather than for doing science and competing for priority. So there is obviously a balance between the two, but having wealthy organizations with a lot of internal funding to support research is beneficial for research because it allows innovative ideas to be grown to a stage where they can withstand competition at international or national level for funding. Okay, just kind of giving you something to think about. And of course, world-class researchers. Now, excellent science is usually done by excellent scientists and scholars and excellent conditions. Excellent scientists and scholars go where other excellent scientists and scholars are. And that is very important thing to realize as part of creating research environment and research conditions. Okay. Now, let me move to the research incentives, which is the second dimension of this framework. Now, it's well known that people do what is easy to do, or more specifically, they do what there are incentives to be done. Okay, so if you incentivize publications in particular journals, your scientists and scholars are very likely to change their behavior to chase publications in these particular journals, which actually is not always a prerequisite for excellent science. Okay. I will tell you that is, I know that the example in most places you will look is that. So for example, in Manchester, you get incentivized to publish in top tier journals. I know that in China, scientists get kind of payment for publication in particular journals, etc. But actually that doesn't necessarily lead to excellent science. It leads to meeting dubious indicators, namely number of publications in particular journals. Okay, now let's imagine a different world here in terms of research incentives and think about what measures actually true excellence in research. And I would venture to argue that excellence in research is much better measured by the level of centrality of your researchers, the researchers from your university, in international knowledge networks. The more central they are to these networks, the more likely it is that they are absolutely top excellent scientists or research teams in this field, right? So basically, instead of incentivizing or trying to incentivize straight away publications in particular journals, if university support incentivizes moving to the center of international knowledge networks, the publications in top journals are an outcome of that rather than a target. So this precludes playing a lot of rather silly games. Okay? Strategic alignment. This dimension is about aligning the priority of the organization or university with national research priorities, and meanwhile accommodating the priorities of various research fields. The fourth one, the fourth dimension is about responsiveness and flexibility. This talk focuses quite a lot on responsiveness and flexibility. So basically, this is about the speed of administrative turnout. It is about realizing that actually research support is exactly what it says. It is there to support research and by default to support the people who do or are supposed to do excellent research. Now, one point I would like to make here is that quite a few university administrations I've been talking to don't seem to realize what is their main asset. Right? When you ask them what are the main assets of the universities, they go, oh, our library, our labs, our da. Well, wrong. Your main asset are your people. And any university, and by default, kind of university support system, that does everything possible to annoy their main asset or to shorthand their main asset, doesn't get very far in terms of supporting excellent research. Now, in the discussion, if you're more interested in that, I can give you an anecdote which will illustrate what I'm saying. But basically, the message I would like you to focus on is that your scientists and scholars, academics generally, are very clever people. And if you don't find a way to mobilize this cleverness constructively, they can become extremely destructive, right? Anyway, collaboration and engagement, this goes back to the point about actually incentivizing participation in international networks. And here, one of the best way to jump in terms of excellent research in a variety of areas is to bring to your place the absolutely top conferences in these fields, because this provides contacts for your people, easy contacts for many people. This provides visibility for your organization, etc., etc. Capacity building and skills development. This is all about different kinds of training, and it's not only about training the next generation of researchers and scholars, but it is also about providing very good training in grant writing, project management, etc., etc. I remember, by the way, here I will tell you an anecdote. About 20 years ago, I was talking to a German colleague, and my German colleagues at the time didn't get many research grants from the European Commission. And as sociologists, we discussed it, and we both decided that it's just a matter of learning. Move 10 years from the point when our first conversation happened, and German scientists and scholars are absolute crème de la crème of research grant acquisition from the European Commission and other places. They basically learned very fast how to write winning grants, because winning grants are a sales pitch. They're not simply somebody making good science. Okay. And last but not least, sustainability and resilience. So research support has to ensure that the practices they implement are sustainable and the support structures are built to last and adapt at the same time. Okay, so do you have any questions on that? Probably we'll keep, if you have questions, please keep them for the end.
Yeah, and you can use Q&A panel for questions. So,
yes, yes, quite. I will, that's why I'm rushing through the whole thing, so that I can actually have time for questions. So using the 7 dimensions, I have come up with 10 illustrative types of your university research support. So I will go through this fairly quickly, but at the end of each of them, there is a university which you can actually check out how university support is organized after the session in your spare time if you're interested. So the first one is the Fortress. And even the name already tells you what this is about. So these are universities where research support is stable, well defended, but very slow to change and adapt. So basically, this is characterized by investments investments in infrastructure and focus on compliance and formal procedures. Okay, and example here is the University of Heidelberg in Germany, which is a very old university. It has very robust research infrastructure, long-term investments in research excellence, but change is very difficult to achieve. So basically, this is an example of the old saying that elephants don't race. Okay. The next type is the accelerator, which actually is university support arrangements where highly competitive incentive systems are implemented. And these systems actually are tied to performance metrics, and they permit everything. They permit promotions, funding, recognitions, etc., etc. Now, the strength of this type of academic of research support is that it ensures very high productivity and very rapid grant acquisitions. However, the risks are associated with overemphasis on quantity over quality, potential burnout culture, and also a lot of game playing. Okay, and an example here is the University of Melbourne. The Agile Hub is university research support system, which is very fast, flexible, and partnership driven. It actually is fairly flat, not hierarchical. It has flat decision-making structures, decentralized services, and very proactive adaptation to new opportunities. Its strengths are that it is very quick and responsive, right, to funding calls, to changes in external environments, etc., etc. But the weaknesses of this kind of arrangements are that they lack, to a degree, stability, and they can struggle with consistency and continuity. Okay, so the example here is, well, actually quite a few universities in Denmark, but the Technical University of Denmark and also Arizona State University in the USA. Next is the strategies. The strategies is university research support system that is laser focused on research that aligns with its strategic mission. Okay, and there are hardly any areas of research supported outside this, the strategic areas decided. Now, the strengths of this arrangement are that it can achieve quite quickly and effectively and efficiently world-leading expertise in the chosen niches. And also, there is very clear organizational identity. There is clarity of strategy, clarity of long-term planning, etc., etc. However, the weakness is that emerging niche fields may be neglected. And this affects eventually, in the long run, the strategic research fields that are supported at the moment. An example of this is the NTU in Singapore. Okay, and okay, I may as well tell you, if this sounds familiar, very likely your university will fit within this type of strategic arrangement, the strategist. Next, we have the collaborator. So here we have structures and incentives that are designed to encourage interdisciplinary work and cross-sector partnerships. Of course, it has many strengths. It supports innovative problem solving, high-profile collaborations, etc. But its weakness is that this requires very complex management of multiple stakeholder priorities. So example here is the UCL in the UK and the University of Toronto in Canada. UCL, University College London, has adopted to develop this research support structures. It's adopted the framework of grant challenges. So they don't support research fields, research discipline, they support grant challenges, and their university support structures are organized accordingly. The talent garden. Now, this support system actually places priority on growing people, not just projects and labs. So this kind of organizations make major investment in capacity building, mentoring, leadership development, etc. And this has many strengths. For example, their high retention rates. Usually, scientists and scholars from this kind of universities don't get poached because they have a very nice deal within these universities, right? There's also the advantage of long-term sustainability of the research culture. The weaknesses, however, are that growing people eventually seeps into developing excellent research, but this takes very long time. And therefore, in research spaces with a very strong emphasis on evaluation of research organizations on the basis of research output, these organizations actually struggle to demonstrate their impact. So examples here provided by the universities of Cape Town and Lund University. Next, we have the resilient anchor. Well, it's in the title, isn't it? This is really kind of built to last and weather different storms from the environment. So this kind of administration and universities have very balanced funding portfolio, strong reserves, contingency planning, and well-institutionalized support roles. So one of its strengths is that it provides stability through different policy shifts and fighting crises, which is very beneficial for actually supporting excellent and path-breaking research. But its weaknesses are that it can easily drift into prioritizing risk avoidance over bold innovation. So the University of Helsinki in Finland is one of the examples of this type of university research management. The Lean Catalyst is supports lean teams. The support teams are also quite lean, and they leverage partnerships to achieve disproportionate impact. So it has strengths, of course. It requires niche specialization, adaptability, and cost efficiencies. But at the same time, this kind of arrangement is very vulnerable to staff turnover in university administration and leadership. The innovation engine. This one is geared to support, and it is to support innovation, and it is tightly integrated with technology transfer, entrepreneurship, and innovation ecosystems. So its strengths are that it displays very high commercialization rates and very strong startup pipelines. But at the same time, it risks over-commercialization at the expense of supporting more fundamental development. So eventually it can exhaust the base, the science base on which this innovation is built. And of course, examples here are Stanford University and Technion in Israel. Now, mind you, that is probably one of the things that universities who can afford this kind of arrangement are usually really independently wealthy. Okay, Stanford University has very considerable endowments, partly through this strategy. And of course, last but not least, we have the hybrid weaver, which combines elements from multiple models. Okay? And an example here is the University of Edinburgh, also the University of Queensland in Australia. The weakness, now it looks like a very strong proposition because it looks like it picks the strengths from all previous types, but there is one major weakness, and it is that this kind of arrangement requires very strong leadership to maintain coherence. Okay? Now, how can you use what I've offered now? Because I really hope that I didn't manage to do that, but you may be already bored. I don't know. And or you think, why that? Now, why that? Because I didn't want to come across as somebody who tells you what to do, but I wanted to provide you a couple of tools that will help you to do what you want to do to support your strategy, or even change your strategy, right? So how can you use these frameworks? Now, the first way to use it is to use it for benchmarking. So where does your university fit in relationship to these 7 dimensions and also to the type? Right? I already told you where it fits in terms of the type, but we can discuss that. You may disagree. Now, also, it will allow you to do gap analysis. So basically determine areas of strength and weaknesses, areas of misalignment, make absolutely sure that your the research strategy of your university is aligned with the research support that is being provided, that the appropriate incentives are offered and actions taken. Strategic planning, you can use this framework to do some strategic planning, namely select a target type or a hybrid of types and develop appropriate interventions and imaginative interventions, may I add. And of course, you can use it for engagement. You can use this framework to initiate and frame dialogue within the organization amongst leaders, team members, university leadership, university administration, and your scientists and scholars. Now, let me close by saying what we already all know. Supporting excellent world-class research demands world-class research support, but that is not one size fits all. So if somebody, an expert that you have hired, comes and tells you do that, don't believe them. They will usually tell you to do something that is done elsewhere around the world, and this may be completely inappropriate for your context, right? The right balance of conditions, incentives, and strategy are context dependent. They depend on the characteristics of your research space, so what the national policy and funding arrangements in Saudi Arabia are, for example. It depends on the characteristics of the research fields that feed into the largely cross-field strategic priorities that your organization has, etc., etc. Universities must be proactive, agile, and aligned to their missions, and even change the missions. And of course, the transition from administrating and discipline and control to being an ally and support for your scholars and scientists is absolutely essential and a major driver of excellence. Thank you, and I will be very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I hope there are some questions with the participants. You can write your question in the Q&A, or if you want to turn on the mic, please go ahead and ask the question. Okay. Yes, I think we have got one question here. How important is it for PhDs who manage and operate advanced centralized equipment, supporting multiple research groups on state-of-the-art facilities to engage in conferences, receiving training, and be acknowledged at a level equal to faculty? And are there worldwide models for this?
I would say absolutely vital. Absolutely vital, especially today when in many research fields, Nobel Prizes are actually won by equipment, not so much by ideas, okay? And then we shouldn't forget that, okay, I'll have to backtrack a bit. Some of this is field specific, okay? So in fields like particle physics, for example, and other similar fields, people who support research groups on state-of-the-art facilities, people who build equipment are an integral part of the global knowledge community. So just to give you an example, in Manchester, at Manchester University, we're very well known for our particle physics group, right? It is kind of world leader position at the center of the knowledge community. It is absolutely central to the Atlas experiment, etc. But when I talk to them, they're central because they're the group that builds and maintains equipment. Okay, so it is very, very critical. I don't know, it may be less critical for lab-based sciences, but it's still not a bad idea to have the people who build and support state-of-the-art equipment to be an integral part of the scientific team, including visiting conferences, discussing scientific ideas, etc., etc. I hope this answers your question. As to any examples, well, I suppose in most state-of-the-art labs, that is how it works, right?
Great.
So
Okay.
it's not waste of money to send the technical people. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, here is another question. Which one of these models is most likely supportive to exploratory, high-risk research ideas?
Right. I suppose it is going to be some combination of them, actually, to support very high-level innovative research, or I will call it path-breaking research, because you see, what a lot of people kind of have a bit of a problem with realizing that maintaining excellent research seems hard, but actually, if you have a lot of money and some competence, it isn't. It is kind of the old thing of the Howard Hughes Medical Institutes, where I was told by their research director a couple of decades back that they maintain excellence very simply, right? They believe that if you find good people and throw a lot of money at them, things happen. And they don't even check what people do with the money, except to check that they spend the money, right? So path-breaking research, however, is a very different matter because path-breaking research breaks trajectories of research, right? And to be able to support that, one has to have sufficient level of stability. So you have to have elements of the fortress, but you have to combine this with elements of the agile hub and the strategist. So to answer your question, I think a combination between the fortress, the agile hub, and the strategist is what actually will support very highly innovative research. Does it answer your question? Mohammed.
Yes, Mohammed Anton, yes.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. Actually, it's the point of flexibility probably is what you added through your answer, that it is not one rigid one of these combinations, but it's something that allows for additional items to be included in.
Quite, but you reminded me something. Any system that aims to support this kind of research has to develop very high tolerance to failure.
Yes.
So I'm not trying to channel the tech bros from the Silicon Valley, but I would say the more you fail, the faster you learn in science and the more kind of advanced science, excellent and path-breaking you can do. But unfortunately, with the contemporary systems of selection, control, competition for resources, we're not allowed to fail very much. And that is what keeps science within some sort of, if you see it as a distribution, the contemporary systems cut actually the tails on both ends. They cut proper failure, but they also cut absolutely outstanding achievements and drive the whole thing to the norm, to the average. So, yeah. Now there's another question. It says, in your experience, which model contributes to a high entrepreneurship and innovation index for research university? It is the innovation engine. Yeah, it is Model 9, the innovation engine. That the example is the Israel Institute of Technology. That is very straightforward. So once I sent the kind of presentation, I can probably send a bit of the description text, because you noticed I couldn't obviously remember the key characteristics of all that. So I have it written down and I refer to it, so I can very quickly edit it and send it as well. So you have a reference point to very quickly check. Yeah?
Yes. Okay, I don't think, okay, here we have another question. Can you comment on the challenge of maintaining a relevant research profile and support in a rapidly evolving field like computing AI?
Sorry, that is the really hard one. And the reason it is a very, very hard one is because computing has always been a very peculiar case as a research field, because it's one of these cases, a bit like biotech, where the boundaries between research and application are very blurred. And you will agree with that, right? So it's a continuous loop and iteration between them. So I'm not sure this fits into the kind of straightforward models of how you support research. Do you know what? I actually would only say that I'm not sure about how you manage that, but what I'm absolutely sure about is that there has to be a very specific provision for fields like computing, AI, biotech, and other fields like that, whereby most things are different. So how you attract research funding, how you attract funding is different, right? Because a lot of funding will come from users. So that's kind of, and from startups and other like that. Publications for you know that in computing, people don't publish in journals as in normal fields. So we can't catch how good people are through that, right? You publish in, sorry, remind me, what are they called? It's kind of synopsis, which gets out very quickly, exactly because of the speed with which the fields move, right? Etc., etc. So even in Britain, which we're very rigid with research evaluation, you realize that there are special provisions for this kind of fields within the Research Excellence Framework, RAF, right? So yeah. Sorry, if I didn't answer this question, it just threw me because I suddenly realized how very, very different this is and how it doesn't fit in my typology of fields that I've developed. So thank you very much. You just sent me back to the drawing board with my book. Yeah?
Yes.
That's, yeah. That is certainly kind of something that benefits me to remind me that I've forgotten something.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think with all the frameworks and the ideas and the concepts that you have shared, I think these are food for thought for everyone. So now that we are not having any more questions, I think we can end the session. And thank you very much for taking out this time and sharing your thoughts with us. So
thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And sorry I couldn't visit, but
yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you. Okay. So that's it, Sanala. You can